Emily pushed open the door with one arm, while the other held her baby close against her chest. The apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that felt heavy after a long day at the diner. She dropped her purse on the counter and was about to set the baby down when her eyes froze on the kitchen table. There it was, a thick envelope. Not a bill, not a letter from a friend. An envelope so stuffed it barely closed. The corner of a stack of cash peeked out from inside. Emily's stomach tightened. She had locked the door that morning, she was sure of it. She hadn't given anyone a spare key. For a moment she wondered if exhaustion was playing tricks on her. But no, the envelope was real. Her heart raced as she looked around the small kitchen. The faded curtains swayed slightly in the evening breeze from the cracked window. She thought she saw movement outside, a shadow shifting, but when she blinked it was gone. She pressed her baby closer, the warmth of the little body against her reminding her of what was at stake. Emily hadn't seen that much cash in years, maybe ever. Rent was past due, the power company had sent another warning, and the paediatric clinic had just called about a bill she couldn't pay. All those numbers, all those threats, seemed to whisper from the pile of envelopes stacked on the counter. And now this new envelope sitting there like some kind of cruel joke. She wanted to reach for it, to open it, to count it, just to be sure. But her hand froze in mid-air. Something about it felt wrong. It wasn't just money. Money never came without a price. She sat down at the edge of the table, rocking her baby gently, staring at the envelope as if it might explain itself. Who had left it there, why, and what would they want in return? For the first time in weeks, Emily wasn't thinking about overdue bills. She was thinking about danger, and deep down she knew nothing in her life would be the same after tonight. Emily woke with a start, her baby stirring beside her. For a moment, she hoped last night had been a dream. But when she walked into the kitchen, the envelope was still there, sitting on the table like it owned the room. She wanted to ignore it. She wanted to pretend it didn't exist. But as she packed a small diaper bag and wheeled the stroller out the door, her eyes kept darting back to it. Even when she locked the door behind her, the image of that thick stack of bills stayed burned in her mind. At the diner, life went on the way it always did. She poured coffee for the same regulars, cleaned up plates left half full, and forced a smile when a man snapped his fingers for more ketchup. But the weight of the envelope followed her like a shadow. Every time she counted coins into the register, she thought about how a single bill from that stack was worth more than her entire shift. During her short break, she scrolled through her phone and found a new voicemail from the landlord. His voice was clipped, almost mocking. "Emily, you're out of time. I want the rent. Friday, no excuses." She deleted it quickly, shoving the phone deep into her pocket. By the end of her shift, her feet ached, her apron smelled like grease, and her smile had worn thin. She pushed the stroller home past neat lawns and parked cars, wondering how other families managed. She pictured walking into the grocery store without counting every dollar, paying the clinic without shame. For a moment, she even let herself imagine what life would feel like if the envelope wasn't just a trap but an answer. But the thought scared her, because deep down she knew nothing came free. When she opened the apartment door, the first thing she saw was the envelope, right where she'd left it, waiting. She lifted her baby out of the stroller, pressed him close, and whispered, "We're okay. We'll be okay." But her voice cracked because she wasn't sure if it was true, and still her eyes kept drifting back to the table. That night, the rain started. It wasn't a storm, just a steady drizzle that tapped against the thin windows of the apartment. Emily had just put the baby down, humming softly until his eyes finally closed. She tiptoed back to the kitchen, her gaze landing once again on the envelope. It sat there like it had been waiting all along. She rubbed her temples, trying to silence the storm inside her head. She couldn't eat. She couldn't focus on the television murmuring in the background. Every few minutes, she found herself glancing toward the table, wondering if she was insane not to touch it. Then came the knock. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the silence like a blade. Emily froze in place, her breath caught in her throat. Nobody knocked on her door this late. Her neighbours minded their own business, and her few friends texted instead of showing up unannounced. The knock came again, firmer this time. Emily stepped closer, her bare feet soundless against the floor. She peered through the peephole. A man stood there, middle-aged, neatly dressed, his dark suit damp from the rain. He wasn't someone she recognized from the diner or the neighborhood. He just stood calmly, not impatient, not nervous, like he knew she was already watching him. Emily's pulse raced. She thought about not answering, about pretending she wasn't home. But then he spoke, his voice low and steady, carrying easily through the door. "Emily, I know you saw the envelope." Her knees almost buckled. She hadn't told a soul. How did he know her name? How did he know she hadn't thrown it away? She backed away from the door, holding her arms tightly around herself as if that could protect her. The man didn't knock again. Instead, he said, almost gently, "I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to talk. You deserve a break. You and your child." The sound of the baby shifting in the crib made Emily's heart lurch. She pressed her hand over her mouth to stop herself from gasping. Through the thin curtains, she saw him glance toward the window, as though checking if she was listening. And then, slowly, he set his hand on the doorknob, not to force it, but to remind her he was there. "I can help you," he said, "but you have to let me in." Emily's hand trembled as she reached for her phone, torn between calling for help and staying silent. She had no idea that opening that door, or keeping it closed, would change everything. Emily didn't open the door that night. She stood frozen in the hallway, clutching her phone, until the man finally stepped away. She listened to the sound of his shoes fading down the stairwell, the echo carrying long after he was gone. Only then did she dare to breathe again. But the next morning she found something slipped under the door. It wasn't another envelope of cash, it was a photograph. Her hands shook as she picked it up. The picture was old, the colours faded. There was her father, years younger, standing beside the same man from last night. Both wore suits, both smiling like they had just made some kind of deal. Emily's throat tightened. Her father had passed away when she was a teenager. He had been a mechanic, a man who worked hard, who came home smelling like engine oil. At least that was the father she remembered. She had never seen him dressed like this, never standing next to men like that. On the back of the photograph, written in neat ink, were the words, "He owed me. Now it's your turn." Emily's knees gave out, and she sank into the chair by the table. Her baby fussed in the crib, and she forced herself up, rocking him against her chest while her mind spun. What kind of life had her father lived when she wasn't looking? What had he gotten himself into? As she tried to calm her baby, a knock sounded again. Not urgent this time, patient. She opened the door just a crack, her voice sharp. "What do you want from me?" The man stood there, raincoat over his arm, a faint smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I told you," he said calmly. "I want to help. Your father couldn't pay his debt, but you can. I'm not asking for much, just your silence." Emily's heart pounded. Silence about what? She wanted to slam the door, but part of her needed answers. She asked, almost in a whisper, "Why me? Why now?" He tilted his head, studying her like she was a puzzle he already knew the solution to. "Because you have something worth protecting, and people will do almost anything when it comes to protecting their child." Emily gripped the doorframe so tightly her knuckles turned white. She realised then that this wasn't just about her father. Whatever secret this man carried, he was tying her into it, whether she agreed or not. And in that moment, she knew the envelope wasn't an offer. It was a leash. For 2 days, Emily left the envelope untouched. It sat on the kitchen table like a storm cloud, reminding her every time she walked by that life could be different, if only she dared. But when the landlord came pounding on the door with his heavy fist, shouting about the rent already 2 weeks late, her resolve cracked. That night, while her baby slept, she peeled the flap open. The sight of all that cash made her stomach flip. She had never seen so much in one place, not even in a bank. Her hands trembled as she pulled a few bills from the middle of the stack, just enough to cover the rent and maybe a grocery trip. She told herself it wasn't really taking it, it was just surviving. The next morning she walked to the leasing office. The receptionist, a woman with sharp eyes and a voice like sandpaper, raised her brow when Emily slid the cash across the counter. "Cash?" she said, her tone dripping with suspicion. "That's unusual." Emily forced a smile. "Just tips I've been saving." The woman didn't look convinced, but she counted the bills anyway. By the time Emily left, she could already feel the weight of the stairs. At the grocery store, it was the same. She paid for diapers and formula with cash, and the clerk, a kid barely out of high school, gave her a look that lingered too long. She imagined him wondering how a tired waitress suddenly had money to spend. By the time she got home, her chest felt tight. A neighbour waved from across the lot, eyes flicking toward the stroller, then back to her. The smile didn't reach her face. Later, when Emily glanced through the blinds, she saw two of her neighbours standing together, whispering, their eyes darting toward her apartment. She slammed the blinds shut. Her baby stirred, and she scooped him up, rocking him gently, whispering, "It's okay, sweetheart, it's okay." But she didn't believe her own words. That night she sat in the dim kitchen again, staring at the envelope, thinner now, its secret cracked open. She thought about the photograph, the man at her door, and the words written on the back. "He owed me. Now it's your turn." Emily realised she hadn't solved anything. She had only stepped deeper into whatever game this man was playing, and worse, people were starting to notice. For 2 days, Emily told herself she wouldn't touch the envelope again, but late one night, after putting her baby down, she sat at the table, the silence pressing in on her. The envelope looked thinner now, but heavier in meaning. Against her better judgment, she peeled it open once more. Her fingers brushed something hard between the bills. She frowned and tugged it free. It wasn't money, it was a small black USB drive. Her stomach twisted. She stared at it under the glow of the kitchen lamp, her pulse drumming in her ears. Whoever had left this wanted her to find it, and that terrified her. She plugged it into her old laptop. The screen flickered, and a folder opened. Inside were several video files, all dated nearly 15 years ago. Her hand hovered, then clicked the first one. The footage was grainy, filmed in some kind of storage warehouse. 2 men stood facing each other. One was the man from her doorstep. The other made her chest tighten until she couldn't breathe. It was her father. He looked younger, worn but determined. His voice came through muffled, but the tone was unmistakable. Urgent, angry. "I told you I won't be part of this, it's wrong." The man in the suit leaned in, his words sharp. "You don't get to back out. You owe me. If you walk away now, you know what happens." Her father shook his head. "I don't care about the money anymore. People could get hurt. I won't do it." The clip ended abruptly, the screen turning black. Emily slammed the laptop shut, her hands shaking. She pressed them over her mouth, trying not to sob loud enough to wake the baby. The father she remembered, the man who taught her to ride a bike, who stayed up fixing broken toys, hadn't been weak or corrupt. He had tried to resist, he had tried to protect. Her chest ached with equal parts grief and fury. This wasn't just about unpaid debts. This man at her door had trapped her father, and now he was circling her. She walked over to the crib and scooped up her baby, holding him tight, her tears dripping onto his blanket. "He tried to fight," she whispered, "and now it's my turn." The knock came again, but this time it wasn't patient. It was sharp, deliberate, the kind of knock that makes your skin crawl. Emily froze halfway across the living room, her baby clutched against her shoulder. She didn't want to open the door. She knew exactly who it was. But silence felt dangerous too. The man seemed to have a way of knowing when she was home, of knowing far more than any stranger should. His voice cut through the wood, calm, steady, but harder than before. "Emily, you've been looking at things you shouldn't." Her knees went weak, the USB, he knew. She stayed quiet, praying he would leave. But then came his next words, low and chilling. "You have something worth protecting. Don't make me remind you how easily things can be taken away." The baby whimpered, sensing her fear. Emily pressed her lips against his soft hair, fighting the urge to cry. She finally forced herself toward the door, her hand trembling on the lock. She didn't open it wide, just enough to meet his eyes. Gone was the polite smile. His face was colder now, his eyes sharp as glass. Raindrops clung to his shoulders, but he looked like a man who didn't notice weather at all. "You're in deeper than you realise," he said. "Your father made choices. He owed me, and now so do you." Emily's throat felt dry. She whispered, "I don't want any part of this." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "It's too late for that. Take the money, keep quiet. If you don't, Well, accidents happen, even to children. Her whole body shook. Instinctively, she stepped back, shielding her baby with her arm. For a moment, she saw a flicker of satisfaction cross his face, as if her fear was exactly what he wanted. But then something unexpected rose inside her. Anger. A fierce heat that cut through the terror. She glared at him through the crack in the door. If you think you can scare me into silence, you don't know me at all. The man tilted his head, almost amused. We'll see, he murmured, before turning and walking down the hall, his footsteps echoing like a warning. Emily shut the door, locked it, and slid to the floor, her baby crying softly in her arms. Her heart thundered, but her mind was clear. He wasn't just after money, he was after control. And if she wanted to keep her child safe, she'd have to find a way to fight back. Emily barely slept after the man's visit. Every creak of the old building, every car passing outside felt like a threat. She kept her baby close, rocking him long after he was asleep, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. I'll protect you. I swear I will. By morning, her eyes were swollen and her body heavy with exhaustion, but her mind was sharper than it had been in days. Fear had carried her this far. Now, anger was pushing her further. She couldn't let him control her. Not with the envelope, not with the photograph, not with the threat hanging over her child. She dug through an old shoebox until she found a scrap of paper with a number she hadn't dialed in years. A friend from high school, Rachel, who had left town, gone to college, and somehow ended up working as a reporter for the local paper. They hadn't spoken in so long that Emily almost put the paper back. But then she pictured the man's cold eyes, the way he'd said accidents happen. She picked up the phone and dialed. The line rang, once, twice, and then a voice she remembered answered, cautious at first, then warm with surprise. Emily, is that really you? Her voice broke as she said, I need help, please. An hour later, they sat across from each other in a quiet corner of the library. Rachel listened without interrupting as Emily poured it all out. The envelope, the photograph of her father, the USB drive, the man's threats. Emily kept her voice low, her hands shaking as she clutched the baby in her lap. When she finished, Rachel leaned back, her face pale. Emily, do you realise what you have? If those videos are real, they could explain things people in this town have whispered about for years. Emily swallowed hard. I don't care about the town, I just care about keeping my son safe. Rachel nodded, her voice firm. Then we do this smart. I'll make copies of the files. I'll talk to someone I trust at the paper, and you... She reached across the table, squeezing Emily's hand. You don't go through this alone anymore. For the first time since this began, Emily felt a flicker of hope. It was small, fragile, but it was there. Still, as she left the library, she caught sight of a dark car parked across the street. A figure sat inside, watching. The same man, or someone working for him, she couldn't tell. Her brief hope was swallowed by dread. She tightened her grip on her baby and whispered, We're not safe yet, not even close. The plan wasn't complicated, but Emily's stomach twisted as if she was stepping into something far bigger than she could handle. Rachel had insisted the only way to break free was to gather proof and force the truth into the open. So they set it up. A meeting. Emily called the number the man had left on a scrap of paper with the first envelope. Her voice shook as she said, I'll do it, but I need to see you, tonight. He agreed too quickly. By evening, the library parking lot was nearly empty, the street lamps buzzing faintly overhead. Rachel parked a few spaces away, her phone recording, ready to send the files to her editor if anything went wrong. Emily stood under the yellow light, her baby at home with a trusted neighbour, her heart pounding like it might burst. Headlights cut through the dark. The same dark sedan rolled in, and the man stepped out, his polished shoes crunching against gravel. He carried himself like he owned the night, like he'd already won. You made the right choice, he said smoothly, stepping closer. Take the money, forget the rest. That's all I ask. Emily held out the envelope, her hands trembling but her voice steady. I don't want your money. I want you to leave us alone. He stopped, his smile fading. That's not how this works. Her throat tightened, but she forced the words out. Then maybe it's time someone else knows what you've been hiding. The man's eyes narrowed. You think you can scare me with a few old videos? Your father thought the same. Look where it got him." The words sliced through her. For a moment she almost faltered, but then Rachel stepped out of the shadows, phone in hand. "Actually," Rachel said firmly, "it's not just her. And it's not just a few videos. We have everything we need." The man's face drained of colour, anger flashing in his eyes. He took a step forward, his voice low and dangerous. "Do you have any idea what you're doing?" Emily's voice cracked but held firm. "Protecting my child." The sound of sirens grew in the distance. Rachel had called them minutes earlier, just in case. The man glanced toward the street, jaw tight, calculating. For the first time, Emily saw fear in his eyes. She gripped the envelope tighter, knowing this was the moment that would decide everything. The sirens lit up the parking lot, red and blue flashing across the library's brick walls. Officers moved in quickly, and the man's mask of confidence finally cracked. He shouted denials, but when Rachel handed over her phone and the officers played the recording, his own voice filled the night, his threats, his deals, and her father's resistance all those years ago. It was enough. They cuffed him and walked him to the car. His eyes found Emily's one last time, sharp and burning with hatred. But this time she didn't look away. She held his stare until the car door slammed shut and he was gone. Her knees buckled. Rachel caught her, pulling her into a hug. "It's over," Rachel whispered. Emily shook her head, tears spilling down her face. "No, it's not over. I still don't know how I'm going to pay rent next month. I still don't know how I'll keep the lights on." Rachel held her tighter. "Maybe, but you're free and you're not alone anymore." Back at her apartment, Emily stood over her son's crib, watching his tiny chest rise and fall. For the first time in weeks, he looked truly safe. She turned toward the kitchen. The envelope sat on the counter, still thick with cash. She picked it up and weighed it in her hand. The temptation whispered in her ear again. Diapers, food, medicine, months of relief. All she had to do was keep it. But then she looked back at her son. His face was soft in the glow of the nightlight, innocent and unknowing. She thought of her father in that grainy video, saying he wouldn't be part of something wrong. He had tried to stand tall. He had tried to protect. Emily's chest tightened. She whispered into the quiet room, "No dirty money will ever touch your life." Her hands shook as she struck a match. The flame caught quickly, curling the paper, blackening the edges. She carried it to the balcony and let the fire eat through the stacks until nothing remained but ash. The smoke drifted into the night sky, and with it, the weight that had been crushing her. She came back inside, wiped her tears, and kissed her son's forehead. "We'll make it," she whispered. "It won't be easy, but it'll be honest, and it'll be ours." Outside, the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, painting the sky in pale gold. A new day, a harder road, but one she was finally strong enough to walk. Lesson: Emily's story reminds us that money can solve problems, but it can also carry chains we can't see. True freedom doesn't come from what we take, but from the choices we're brave enough to make. Question: if you were in Emily's place, holding that envelope, would you have taken the money or walked away? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again in the next story here on Rain Inside.